In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to create a sculpted head out of some different crafting type materials in order to create your stop motion created character. So for this, I'm starting with a foam ball, but this base could be done just as easily out of tin foil, out of crushed plastic bags, out of bunched paper, and I'm going to be using sort of a technique of carving in addition to things like using school glue that's been watered down, some tissue paper of different colors. But all of these materials are completely optional. You could do the same effects with torn paper, regular paper, paint, or simply directly on the foam with things like paint or marker. So I'm going to be kind of walking through how to go about creating a character with an armature with a little more detail than maybe the one we created, or with more motion than the one we created for the claymation video. If you end up using a foam ball like me, it's important you have a work surface that's safe, that just in case your knife slips, you're not going to end up damaging the table surface you're working on. So I'm going to start by figuring out what my head is going to look like, carving away spaces for the nose, for the eyes, and deciding if I need any motion within the face itself. I'm probably going to have a pretty simple face, but this material carves away pretty easily. Consider which parts are going to stick out the most. More than likely, it's going to be the nose area. So I'm going to start by carving down the places that are lower, like the eyes. Try to keep your hands out of the way of your knife. You don't want to accidentally cut yourself. As you can see, I've started to get kind of my eye shapes going here. I've got my nose kind of ready to go. Uh-oh, I've given him kind of a funky expression. I kind of like that, so that's okay. All right. Well, so there's my kind of finished head here. It's a shape that I'm pretty happy with. I'm going to clean up all of this mess, and then I'm going to come back and show you how do we cover this with some material so the foam stops flaking off and getting everywhere. Okay, so I have a bowl of water with a couple of tablespoons of water, and I have a bottle of Elmer's school glue. You can use any kind of glue for this. If you have Mod Podge, that works really well. You don't have to water that down. But the Elmer's school glue is a little bit thick for what we want. So, and the Mod Podge, I actually would water down anyway, just because, I had a little too much water in there, just because you don't need it very much. So, add some glue to your water, and mix it up really good. I like to use a brush for this just because it keeps my fingers clean. but you could use a spoon, you could use a finger, you could use anything at all. It doesn't really matter. The main idea is that you're wanting to make a smooth, consistent material. So the glue and water are kind of mixing together now, which is perfect. Okay, now I have some different colors of tissue paper, and you can use any colors at all, and you could use any kind of paper. It doesn't have to be tissue paper. I like the way the tissue paper lays because I can do many layers and kind of adjust so that my tints or colors accordingly, because they layer on top of each other. So I could put kind of a taupe and a white and a brown and a black and really create some interesting values. One thing you don't want to do is you don't want to take a big piece and just sort of lay it on top. This is going to create something that doesn't look very good. It's going to have a lot of ridges. So what you do instead is you want to take a little time and tear small-ish pieces of tissue paper. Once you have a pile of tissue paper, then you're ready to start applying it on. So that's probably good to start with. And so now I'm going to put a little bit of my Mod Podge or glue and water solution onto my foam head. And I'm going to put it on quite thickly till it's nice and shiny. Then I'm going to take my tissue paper and I'm going to lay it right on top. Okay. As I do this, I'm going to sort of press down, and with my glue solution, I'm going to go on top of that. And so what I'm doing is, my goal is that I'm wrapping this tissue paper around these forms that I've carved out of the block and taking it from a smooth surface, or from a kind of rough foam surface, I should say, to a smooth surface. My goal is to make it smooth, but showing all of my designs and decorations. If you're finding that your piece of tissue paper is not fitting into the spaces that you've created very well, it may be that it's too large, or you need more of your glue underneath. So you can lift it back up and then put it back down. So work at this for a little while. As the paper gets saturated, it will sort of start to stick to the surface of your foam. And this process will work the same if you're using crumpled paper as your base, or if you're using tin foil as your base, or if you're using any number of other types of materials. Instead of a foam head, you can use a lot of other stuff. But this was just my example. Okay. This technique of covering with tissue paper or any kind of paper can work. And we actually call this process decoupage. So it works pretty well and it's pretty handy. So I'm going to finish decoupaging the whole head, and then I'll come back after I let it dry, and I'll kind of show you what the next stage is. So I have waited for my head to dry, and this is kind of, and I've completely covered it, and this is what it looks like. It's very kind of basic at this point, because a lot of the facial features that we usually recognize as being part of, for people, eyes, eyebrows, mouth, ears, etc., hair, are all either missing or all the same color. So it's kind of hard to tell what's going on. So the first thing I would do at this stage is I would spend a little time finding the details that need some emphasis. And I can do that either through doubling up another layer of decoupage, where I could make the color darker by adding a second layer of torn tissue paper, or I can go in with like a marker, like a Sharpie, and help define some of those areas. So for me, for my project, I am perfectly fine with going in with a Sharpie. So I'm going to find where the nostril should be, and I'm going to add those in there. Okay, so now I've got some nostrils. I can also find kind of the edges of the nose and help kind of define those at the bottom, if I wanted to help define it up the edge of the nose on the side a little bit, I could, or I could call that good. So one thing with this is that a little goes a long way. If you, if you overdo the marker, it can make it really kind of tricky to see it as visible or read it as a face anymore. So a little bit is better than too much. And as you're working, consider which things you want to be changeable. So in my case, and for probably your case too, I want the eyes to be able to show expression, so I don't want to draw those directly onto the head. If I were to do that, then they're kind of locked into a single expression. But things like the eyebrows, because I have very defined eyebrow ridges here, I can put those on. So you can use something like paint or marker to draw them if you wish, or you can start to bring in other materials. So I have this cool yarn that I think looks kind of like hair. So I'm going to find some pieces of it, and I'm going to use this for my eyebrows. Gluing things like yarn is a little more tricky than gluing things like paper because it's more three-dimensional. So I recommend a tacky glue or hot glue or a kind of glue that sets a little faster than regular Elmer's glue, because otherwise you're going to end up holding whatever you're trying to attach for a lot longer. This one, maybe about 35-45 seconds, you have to hold it on. Hot glue, like 10 seconds, 5 seconds even. It really depends on how much patience you have and how quickly you want this project to get done. Then the other thing is faces or eyes. Different expressions can be made by cutting out shapes and cutting out shapes that you've drawn on white paper, using black and white and color if you want. Just some things to keep in mind. Small pupils tend to make things look scared or angry. Larger pupils are much more relaxed and happy. Different directions can be combined, and you should always have kind of a neutral. So get a number of different kind of eyes going, and you can really get some interesting things happening. So just kind of keep that in mind. And these I would cut out, and then I use double-sided tape just because it's a little bit easier to swap them out that way. But you can use regular tape too. And then all you do is you turn them into a sticker and stick them where they go. If you had sticker paper, you could use this directly. But, oh, this time I lost my tape over here. Just go slow, and if it stops being sticky, just put new tape on there. So here's kind of my neutral face. A little bit sad because of how my eyebrows are, but that's okay. So this is kind of one expression my character can have, and by swapping out those eyes, you can have a bunch of different expressions. So I'm going to go away. I'm going to make some hair, some eyebrows, and then when I come back, I'm going to show you how do you put together kind of your body or attach a head onto an armature body. So I've completed my character, pretty happy with how she's turned out. I've got hair all the way around, glued on here. Eyebrows, my eyes, she's ready to go. However, I need a body. So I need to make a body. I have a couple ways that I can do this. I could do it the same way that we made bodies for our clay characters, out of tinfoil and the paper clips and more Mod Podge or more of my skin wrapped on top. I could definitely do that. That'd be pretty easy to do. But another way I can show you is using a lot of different other types of materials. You can make bodies really out of anything. This one that I've kind of designed here is actually like a stick, a dowel, that you could use a stick from outside even. You don't have to use like a bought one, but I had to happen to have this one around. And I've made kind of a body shape out of fabric. So let's back that up a little bit, you can see. But you could use paper, you could use even plastic bags, Right now it's flat, so I'm going to put my head on for one thing, and so all I do is kind of punch a little hole here at the bottom, and it goes right on. I want to make sure I don't glue this too tightly. I want to be able to turn it left and right. So that's one. And then, but right now it's very flat. This kind of thing you could have as a puppet directly if you wanted. You could control it with your hands inside, but it gets a little tricky to do stop motion that way. So a better option would be to stuff it. You could use, I'm going to use my leftover tissue paper, but you could use plastic bags. You could use actual stuffing if you have it. You could use the aluminum foil trick. There's a lot of different things you can use to fill the body cavity, but I'm going to kind of push this up in there, and I'm actually going to move my, make my arms. So I'll do that and come back. So my character is ready to go. I kind of pulled some of that tissue out. That was one of the nice things about it. It works really well for the hands. However, it doesn't work particularly well for stop motion as far as being able to hold a pose. So putting wire inside of something that you've put stuffing on will let you put a pose and hold it so that your character can stay there while you photograph your pictures. So wire or bent paper clips, even tin foil will let those poses be held. But something else that we'll need to do is we'll need to be able to have the character stay kind of in our upright position or, sideways position or something without my hands having to be in the shot. So there's many ways you can do this. You can make sure that you created legs that can hold up a character, but that can be kind of tricky. So another way you can do it is you can bolt them to a table or tape them down. You can do that way, or you can use string. This is fishing line, which is a plastic string that many people have in their garages. And basically, this is a clear string that doesn't show up particularly well on camera. You guys can probably see it a little bit as I kind of wiggle it and shine it in the light here over top of this very dark fabric. But normally, like if you're on a low contrast surface or there's lots of other stuff going on, it's very difficult to see. So this is a really, really great material to use if you are wanting to suspend something in the air. So grab a length of it, cut it, and string it in various different body parts. And basically you're going to be making like a rig, almost like a marionette doll, where you can then hold your character up in the air without having to be having to hold them with your hands. So I'm just going to string this on a big needle that I've got, and you can do it that way. You can also just glue the string on. If you've got hot glue, it'll work better. But because I'm using fabric, I'm going to just sew it on. If you're using like paper or another type of material, you might have to get a little more creative with how you are attaching the string, or if you even need the string. Maybe you can figure out a way to keep your hands out of the shot, or maybe the hands are supposed to be part of the shot. I don't know. That's going to be all depending on your story and what you are needing to make or do. So that is kind of the last stages of this. So just a reminder, I want to make sure I've got my facial expressions, that I can cut out all of these different sets of eyes, and I can have tape on them and they're ready to go, and I can swap them out for, whenever if I want her to like blink or wink at you, or if I want her to kind of look in a different direction, any of that kind of stuff I can do with stickers, basically. So these are just swappable parts, and I could make different facial, like mouths and stuff too, if I wanted to do it that way. So we want to have facial expressions, we want to have movable arms and legs that will show walking motion, not just kind of hovering across the screen, but actual movement And once I've got all those things, my marionette puppet or my character toy is ready to go for my animation.